The wedding hoopla. I'm not really into weddings. It's not that I don't believe in marriage, obviously. In fact, while I take issue with the whole wedding planning rigmarole, I do get swept up in the emotion of the event when I'm a guest. But the dramatic production of getting engaged and the over-the-top ceremony with hundreds of people, it all strikes me as the antithetical to the end goal, which is to celebrate the union of the bride and groom. I've had two weddings. The first was in Tahiti and the second was in Bali. In both cases, my parents ended up semi-forcing us to do a later celebration in Washington for our family and friends, both of which turned into the weddings I was trying to avoid. I realize as I write this that I sound like a stereotypical celebrity. Oh, I'm so uninterested in weddings, so I just went off and got married at a little resort in Bali, where we did a soul-cleansing ritual before we offered our firstborn to the little old man from Eat, Pray, Love. But I do think there is a good, or at least understandable reason why so many people in the public eye have extremely small weddings. As an actress, you get more dates than most people, in which it feels like you are celebrating yourself. Whether it's a premiere or photo shoot or talk show appearance, all those feel like, okay, this day is all about me. And sometimes it's awesome and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you want privacy or for someone to not appear in your personal space every time my hair falls out of place. I know how lucky I am to have all of that, and I certainly don't begrudge the people whose job it is to make sure that my hair is as it should be when we're taping an episode of Mom. But not having all that can feel special too. Now that I think about it, maybe my aversion to a big to-do has nothing to do with fame, because I've never been a wedding person. Kate, my neighbor friend, had a wedding book in 3rd grade. It had the dress and the flowers and the whole shebang, but I had no interest. Wedding talk didn't make me angry or anything. I just didn't care about it. I've never been great with party planning or interested in making fuss about giant celebrations and making everything look perfect, which is probably related to why my house looks as insane as it does, with an outdated kitchen and living room walls covered in stuffed elk heads. So nothing about the hoopla of weddings appealed to me. It's not just the fuss. The modern rituals of weddings, the big surprise proposal, the bridal party, the show of it all, they make me uncomfortable. I know I'm a buzzkill, but a lot of women question those outdated rituals, right? How can you not? Both Ben and Chris asked my father if it was okay to propose to me, and in both cases my dad said that while of course he thought it was very considerate of them to ask, it was unnecessary because it is completely my daughter's choice. I thought that was pretty cool of him. Who came up with the idea that an engagement should be some elaborate high-pressure surprise where you are essentially dropping a person? I don't know where along the way we became a culture that mandates you must conceive of some crazy trickery that will later be deemed romantic. It's fun for the surpriser, but not the surprisee. And then there is some poor woman who's like, holy shit, should I be doing this? Well, I can't say no now that he's created a scavenger hunt leading me to a ring on a chain around my dog's neck, who then barked 3 times and my whole family, in from out of town, jumped out from behind the couch to start the celebrations before I've even answered. So, okay, yes, I do. The first time Ben proposed to me, we were on our way to lunch with our friend Alex. We walked into an antique watch store that also had a lot of jewelry. Ben looked at the wedding rings and said, "Which one do you like?" "I don't know," I said. "I'm hungry. I want to go eat Mexican food." "Just look," he said. So I pointed to a vintage ring with a Victorian look and said, "I don't know, this one is kind of cool. I'd like to purchase this." Ben told the jeweler of the ring before getting down on one knee. I think my exact words were, No, this is not how this is happening. Alex was there and we were on our way to eat burritos. I didn't even know if I wanted to marry Ben at all, but I certainly didn't want to commit in that moment with Alex and the jeweler watching. So he didn't buy the ring, and we left and ate burritos during a palpably tense meal. 6 or 7 months later, Ben and I had a dinner reservation at the restaurant at the Mondrian Hotel, and over drinks he said, "Why don't we stay the night?" It turned out he had booked a room and covered the bed in rose petals, and when we got upstairs he got down on one knee and said all the nice things you might imagine for a marriage proposal. That's when I said yes. I remember thinking in that moment that I didn't want to tell my parents. In retrospect, I should have examined that more. The evening was supposed to be romantic, and I'm sure for most women it would have been, but I can't be alone in thinking there is an element of blindsiding to these moments. God forbid you propose to in a stadium on the jumbotron, at which point you will be the most hated person in the arena, and eventually the world when the clip goes viral if you say, "I don't know." Once you accept a marriage proposal, the engagement takes over your life. It's all you talk about with your friends and your fiancé and your parents. And that's not me being negative. That's just fact. Then there is a whole bridesmaid thing of ranking your friends, which we've got into already, but I repeat, it's weird. Plus the frantic energy of the moment 3 hours before the ceremony when the makeup artist can't be found and there is a crazy hubbub as everyone scrambles to find a replacement. Some people just get off on the drama. All of that is why I always say a honeymoon is essential. There is a December 26th feeling to that day after your wedding, so you've got to have something to look forward to when you wake up that morning. The celebration that required all your attention for the last year is over, and that can be a letdown even when you've griped your way through the whole thing. I sound like such a grump. I do love everything that a wedding stands for. I have an entire podcast about relationships. I just think the wedding build-up is an especially trying time. It's a scenario in which people show their cards. Sometimes they step up to the plate in ways you wouldn't expect, and sometimes they let you down in ways you didn't anticipate. An admission, when it comes to getting wrapped up in the wedding hoopla, I'm not totally innocent. I've had my moments. Before I had 2 of my own, 4 if you count the big celebrations I had at my parents' insistence. The first wedding I remember being a part of was my brother's wedding to his first wife. Their wedding was a big to-do, and probably out of obligation the bride asked me to be in the bridal party. You know how that goes. I was at the end of the line of bridesmaids, the new sister-in-law who the bride didn't know that well and probably didn't really like. We wore these plain, almost Amish-looking pale pink dresses, which were incredibly unsexy, but that was fine. I didn't really care about how I looked. No one was looking at me. And I remember dancing a ton and having a great time, and my brother being furious at me because I'd been late to the ceremony. But being a little bit late for the wedding was nothing, because I'd already cemented my place in the story of their nuptials at the rehearsal dinner. I was 20 and I was drunk. And so the night before the wedding, I stood up and announced that I was ready to give the bride and groom a present. A monologue from Carson McCullers' play, The Member of the Wedding. I can't believe my parents let me do this. I shuddered to think of it. The little sister who thinks she is an actress delivering a dramatic reading from the point of view of a 12-year-old girl who wants to be a part of her brother's wedding but also doesn't want to lose him. How pretentious is that? I performed that monologue in front of nearly 100 people, and I can only imagine what my ex-sister-in-law must have been thinking. I literally prefaced it with, "Din din din, I want to give you both a gift." My brother and I have never spoken about this moment. I can't imagine he has anything complimentary to say about it, though has been kind enough to avoid mocking me, and he didn't even get back at me, despite the 2 weddings at which he could have. Shortly before getting engaged, Ben and I traveled to Tahiti, where we took an amazing island tour led by a local named Mako. When we were planning our wedding, I suggested inviting just our closest friends and family, having Mako take us all to the Tahitian islands and doing a swimsuit wedding. Ben was cool with it, my parents not as much. "What do you mean?" my mom asked. "You're having a 14-person wedding in Tahiti and that's it?" "Yes," I said. "So what? It's just gonna be us and your friends?" "Yes." "So I can't invite any of my friends?" "Not really," I said. "Well, fine, we'll come," she said. "I was paying for everything. But we are gonna have a big party for you afterwards." It wouldn't have been practical to invite a huge crowd to Tahiti. There was a lot of getting in and out of boats, which was not an activity for a grandmother. I knew this was not the event my parents had imagined for their daughter, but at the end, the wedding was just what I wanted, and we spent the morning feeding stingrays and drinking beer on a boat with Mako and his ukulele-playing nephew. Then we went to the island where Mako's family lived. They made us fresh tuna with coconut milk, and it was a collection of people I treasured the most, all salty in our swimsuits, and lightly buzzed. The night before the wedding, I came up with an idea I'm still proud of, and split the guests into 2 groups. One was tasked with coming up with an original dance, the other original song. They blew it out of the water. It was an amazing wedding from start to finish, and at the end of the night, I was grinning from ear to ear. Wearing my flower crown and looking around at everyone's slightly burned cheeks, I felt like I had escaped the wedding mayhem I wanted nothing to do with. But then I spent the next 2.5 years in a marriage that wasn't right for me. So there you go. In an effort to smooth over the whole 14-person Tahitian affair with my parents, who had spent more than 25 years thinking they would throw their daughter a big wedding, I agreed to let my mom host a party in Washington. It became a source of contention pretty quickly. I had 10 friends there, and my parents had 180, and my mom bristled at any friends I suggested adding. But my parents were generous and footed the bill. It ended up being an especially crazy night for me because our families were completely dramatic about everything. And my friends all did ecstasy, and it was a little bit miserable, I hate to say. So that sort of reaffirmed my aversion to big weddings. I just don't understand going to all this trouble and spending all this money to have a big celebration, and then being miserable and stressed throughout the whole thing. All that said, when I'm at a wedding, I'm a sucker for the sentimentality. I don't cry very much in my own life, which is something I get from my mom. It's kind of a problem. I wish I cried more. It would probably be a good release for me though. Not crying helps me deal with rejection, a good skill to have in my line of work. The only time I do find myself crying is at weddings, and despite my personal stance on bridal parties, I've actually been a bridesmaid 7 times. I don't particularly like doing it, but I'm good at it. Granted, I'm bad with planning and organizing, but I'm great at being attentive to someone else and not really caring about what I look like, almost to a fault. I'm the first to acknowledge that this event is not about me, So while I do admittedly have a skeptical view of the wedding process, I recognize that there is something poignant and momentous to proclaim your love for someone in front of a lot of people, most of whom you love or maybe at least like. Chris and I did that, though not at first. In 2009, we traveled to a friend's wedding in Bali, and we stayed on the island for a few days afterwards for an extended vacation. We'd been together for 2 years. He'd already asked me to marry him, and we were staying at this incredible resort where we discovered there was an actual wedding option when you booked your room. So we decided to elope and get married that weekend after all the guests left our friend's wedding. It was a gorgeous ceremony that was just the two of us. We had already told our parents that we were probably gonna elope, and we'd promised them that we would have a party at home too. It took us 3 years to make it happen, and we had a big celebration that ended up being the wedding we'd been trying to avoid. But this time it was pretty incredible. We hosted 70 people at a lodge in Washington. My dad officiated the ceremony, and it was exactly the way we wanted. There was some minor drama at the party, but I remember giggling my way through it because it reminded me of the beauty of elopement, which was just me and Chris. Nothing major happened at the party, just my cousins getting in a fist fight on the dance floor and some of Chris's friends bringing strippers as dates, and then a girlfriend of one of Chris's friends accusing me of hitting on her boyfriend on my wedding day. Your average wedding hoopla, who wouldn't want that?